Now, first to Jessica Millwood at Virgin headquarters in Brizzy. Jess, the airline is expected to go into voluntary administration. When can we expect that to be confirmed?
Carl, good morning. We're expecting that announcement to be officially made to the ASX in the coming hours. But in breaking news, Richard Branson, who owns the Virgin Group, has announced he will mortgage his private Caribbean island to save as many jobs as possible. He's also calling on the UK government to step in with some sort of funding and save Virgin. He's written an open letter to what he's calling the Virgin family, and that in part reads, if Virgin Australia disappears, Qantas would effectively have a monopoly of the Australian skies. We all know what that would lead to. Of course, the people that would be disadvantaged by that would be the Australian travellers, but there was a board of directors meeting late last night to try and find a way out of all of this. Seemingly they couldn't, and they have admitted defeat. We understand Deloitte accountancy firm has been appointed. Their task will be to strip back the airline, make it more appealing to investors. It is 90% owned foreignly. Richard Branson's group, Virgin Group, owning 10%. In the past few days, Queensland and New South Wales governments have been locked in a tussle, both of them trying to help the flailing airline that is now looking likely to be the biggest casualty of this coronavirus crisis. There's a lot of questions. What does this mean for the 10 million Australians that are in the Velocity program? Last night, the website crashed with people trying to log on and cash out. It seems to be working again this morning, though. What does this mean for the 10,000 Australians employed by Virgin? 1,200 of them in the building behind me, 5,000 in Queensland all up. And what does this mean for Tiger, the budget carrier, which is also owned by Virgin? We're hoping to get some answers to these questions, more to play out in the coming hours on this big aviation story. Carl.
Jess Millwood, thank you.
National Cabinet will meet today to discuss the extent of a slow and gradual windback of restrictions, including a return of elective surgeries. Let's bring in Christina Hearn, who's at Melbourne's Alfred Hospital. And Chris, when will these types of surgeries restart?
Ali, it could be within days that elective surgeries could resume, IVF treatments as well. Since March 26, non-urgent elective surgeries have been banned. Now, the reason for that, of course, was to free up hospital beds and medical supplies for the expected influx of coronavirus patients. But because we've managed to flatten the curve quicker than expected, that is no longer required. So it is expected that these types of surgeries will resume within days. Good news for patients, of course. In Victoria alone, there's some 50,000 patients that were on that elective surgery waiting list before the suspension. The federal government has also secured some 60 million surgical masks. That, of course, will boost medical supplies. The Victorian government, meanwhile, is pressing ahead with its plan to create an extra 4,000 ICU beds. This is some exclusive vision within the old Peter Mac Cancer Centre, and you can see that it is being transformed into a corona ward, 84 ICU beds being created. But because of social distancing, all these hospitals that have doubled, sometimes even tripled their ICU bed capacity, they now might never be used. Ali?
Let's hope that remains the case. Thanks, Chris.
All eyes will be on Queensland's new school learning portal this morning after too much traffic forced it to crash for the start of the new term. Let's go to Ashlyn Grikellis on the Gold Coast. Ashlyn, it's been a bumpy start for students.
And for parents and teachers, Alex, the new system stalled on takeoff yesterday. Only around 12% of students in Queensland actually went to school. It meant that 1.8 million users tried to log on to the government's new Learning from Home site at around the same time yesterday, and it simply couldn't cope. It crashed. The Catholic Education online system did the same. At the same time, New South Wales is moving to start sending students back to the classroom. That should happen from May 11th, and we're expecting to find out more details on how that will work from the New South Wales Premier this morning. It is expected to be a staggered start with a roster system and some students attending on some days but not others. Meanwhile, here in Queensland, Alex, the Education Department says it's been working overnight to try to resolve all of its technical issues. We'll find out in about 2 hours' time how the system copes on day 2.
Pens and paper at the ready. Ashlyn, thank you.
Some beaches across Sydney and the Gold Coast have reopened, but with a stern warning for people to comply to social distancing. For Sydney-siders, Coogee, Maroubra and Clovelly are now open. A decision is now being finalised for tourist hotspot Bondi. The same goes for those on the Goldie, with the reopening of Service Paradise and Coolangatta beaches. A second rescue flight is making its way to Adelaide this morning. More than 300 Aussies will touch down just after 9 a.m. from India and will be tested for COVID-19 before entering hotel quarantine. Hundreds more are waking up in a hotel in Adelaide CBD this morning after arriving on a separate flight from India yesterday. Well, it seems Australians are taking preventative measures to stop the spread of coronavirus more seriously. The number of people wearing face masks has quadrupled in the past 6 weeks, according to a new survey. But doctors are concerned by an 8% drop in hand sanitising. Experts say washing your hands and social distancing are the best weapons we have in the fight against COVID-19.
The oil industry is facing a crisis like never before as prices plummet into the negative for the first time in US history. US correspondent Amelia Adams has more from New York. And Amelia, just how much is oil selling for at the moment?
Well, it had settled at around minus $37 a barrel, Ali, just unprecedented. And it is because, of course, there's no demand for oil, very little demand because of all the economic shutdowns surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. There's an oil glut. The US is also running out of places to store its oil. So this news triggered a bit of a plummet on the stock exchange here at Wall Street, where we are. The Dow Jones dropping 600 points. Chaos on the markets and chaos on the streets of America as well. Today it was Pennsylvania, where we've seen hundreds of people getting out and protesting. They want their freedom back, and many of them were armed, so it got pretty fiery.
Who brings guns to a protest? I don't want people to die. It is a life versus work. It's money versus lives.
Yeah, these scenes as the death toll from coronavirus across America has doubled in the past week to more than 40,000, and public health experts, Ali, warning that it is very, very complex to reopen anywhere in America. This country needs to at least triple its current rate of testing.
And so divided at the moment. Thanks, Amelia. European countries are beginning to ease restrictions, with Germany opening small shops, car dealerships and bicycle stores, but it's now compulsory there to wear a mask. In Norway, children have been able to return to their preschools, and the UK has recorded its lowest number of deaths in a fortnight, but says it's not yet at the stage to ease the lockdown.
Let's get you sport, and Todd Greenberg's 4-year reign as NRL Chief Executive is over. But the question this morning is, who will take his place? Nine's Chief Rugby League reporter Danny Weidler is with us. He's at NRL headquarters. Danny, was there any other option at all but for Greenberg to go?
Well, Alex, for years, Todd Greenberg has been a slick media performer. He's been able to wriggle out of media situations that have been very tricky for him. He's been known as Teflon Todd. But the knockout blow for Todd Greenberg came probably a couple of weeks ago now, when the Nine Network released a statement criticising NRL management, the way it's conducted itself, the bloated front office. And from that point, there was no way that Todd Greenberg could survive. He was frozen out of future TV rights negotiations, and he became a dead man walking.
You've been front and centre of this story, Danny, and I saw your report last night, Phil Gould telling you that he doesn't want the top job. Who do you think, though, is tipped to replace Todd Greenberg?
Well, Alex, right now, the person who's been put in the position has got some quite favourable reports. His name is Andrew Abdo, unknown really outside of rugby league circles. He's the commercial manager, and he's done a reasonable job in that position. The boss of the game, the current boss of the game, Peter V'landys, is a big fan of Andrew Abdo, so he has got support there. But there will be other names that get tossed up from Clubland. The likes of the Broncos, Paul White, he's got quite strong support from the CEOs. They really rate him as a CEO of the game. Blake Solly from South Sydney is another one. And also the New South Wales Rugby League's Dave Trodden has got quite good support throughout the game.
We'll be keeping a very close eye on it. Danny Weidler in Sydney, thank you.